I'm Chris Barney, and this is the rules video for Fall of the Last City. So, in the past, learning to play Fall of the Last City has been challenging. The rules are moderately complex, and you need to understand them all before you can play the game because of the real-time turns. Luckily for my players, I found a solution. Like many video games, Fall of the Last City comes with a tutorial. The player who's going to be running the game opens the tutorial document and reads it, the bold parts out loud to the other players and the rest to themselves. The tutorial walks them through the first 5 rounds of the game. During those rounds, they learn all of the rules of the game and are ready to continue playing on their own by the end. The tutorial format works because there's plenty of room in those 5 turns for meaningful choices, but there's also an optimal set of moves that everyone can be walked through that will teach them all the basic rules. And that's great, but it doesn't help me a lot here since you all are not here playing the game with me, you're just watching the video. So I'm going to go over the rules as best I can, and I'll include the tutorial and rules documents with my submission so that you all can see how they're used to play the game. Since the rules are a bit complex, I'm just going to give an overview, and then I'll discuss some of the details at the end. If you listen to the end of the overview, then you should have a good grasp of the basics. If you get there and you still have questions, then keep listening, and I'll cover everything in the second half of the video. Right, so the rules overview. You win the game by scoring the most victory points. You score victory points doing 3 things. 1, for each base that you control at the end of the game by occupying it with your warriors, and that's 1 point. For 2 points for controlling each territory, and you control territories by having the most bases in them at the end of the game. And then 1 point for each ally token that you get from another player during the course of the game. The game starts with a blank board with just the city placed in the center with 30 citizen tokens for each player. The player's home bases are placed on the points of the hexagonal board, and each turn the players can either recruit or take a board action. And remember that all the players will be taking their actions simultaneously each round of the game. If a player takes a recruit action, then they take a citizen from the city for each of the bases that they control at the beginning of that turn. They convert those citizens into warriors by discarding them and then taking a warrior from their graveyard and placing it into their tribe bag. So in the case of this player, they would have two warriors that they would be able to recruit during a recruit action. Let's see. And they can choose to put those anywhere they would like on any base that they control. If the player takes a board action, then they can do each of the following things 1 time. They can place or remove a path adjacent to their pawn. So in this case, they would be able to move this, or if there were no warriors, they could remove this. They could also place a piece anywhere adjacent to the piece that they were on. They can move their pawn as far as they would like along a path. And they can pick up or put down warriors from bases that they are on. After taking either a recruit action or a board action, they raise their fist in defiance of the city. When all of the players have their fists raised, then the round ends. And that's the basic elements of the game. The dynamic that arises from that game structure of simple board building and territory control during real-time turns is a feeling that the world is constantly shifting both in response to your actions and to the other players. It creates a play space that feels alive in a way that I haven't seen in any other tabletop game. Of course, the players are going to quickly come into contact with each other. Thus, there's 2 kinds of conflict within the game. The first and simplest conflict is between a player's pawn and another player's warriors. In a video game, that would be PvE combat. When the player moves their pawn next to a base that another player's warriors are on, then they're able to use the place or pick up warriors part of their turn to pick up the enemy's warriors. They have to sacrifice 1 warrior from their tribe bag for each enemy warrior that they're removing from a base. When the base is unoccupied, then it no longer belongs to any player, and any player can place warriors onto it to claim it. The second kind of conflict is between 2 players' pawns. In video game terms, that would be PvP conflict. So this conflict takes the form of a challenge. The challenge isn't necessarily a fight. It can also be a chance for the players to make an alliance. The challenge is, of course, represented in the form of a prisoner's dilemma. When 2 pawns are on pieces adjacent to each other, then a challenge can be issued by saying challenge, surprisingly. So here's the details of resolving a challenge. Both players reach into their tribe bags and take out some number of warriors and they to commit to this conflict, and they keep that number secret. Both players then take a challenge token that's white on one side and black on the other. If they wish to ally, then they place the token down with the white side up. If they wish to attack, they place it with the black side up. The token is, of course, placed secretly. Both players reveal their tokens at the same time. If both tokens are white, then they've made an alliance. Warriors are put away, and the players are rewarded by taking 3 citizen tokens from the city box, converting them into warriors, and placing them directly into the tribe bag. Players then also exchange ally tokens. If both players put down black tokens, then a fight's broken out. Both players reveal the number of warriors they have in their hands, and both players lose the lower number. If one of the players still has warriors, then they win the conflict. The winner can remove all of the warriors from one of the loser's bases anywhere on the board. The removed warriors are placed back into the loser's graveyard. If one token is black and the other is white, then the player with the black token has betrayed the player with the white token. Warriors are returned to their tribe bags and none are lost. The player with the black token may remove all the warriors from one of their opponent's bases anywhere on the board, and they may also place up to 6 warriors from their tribe bag directly onto the newly empty base. As you might have guessed, challenges are where the heart of the game is found. All of the board building and mechanical tactics really just serve to create a meaningful framework that this kind of social interaction can hang on. So play continues until the end of the turn where there's no more citizens in the city. Then the city has fallen, and there's a final challenge to see if any of the tribes will control what remains. All the players can participate in this challenge. If a player wants to fight for the city, they place their challenge token black side up, hidden of course. The player who commits the most guards wins the conflict and claims the city. City's worth no victory points on its own, but it counts as a base in each territory for scoring territory points. Remember that controlling the most bases in the territory is worth 2 points, so the city is a really valuable resource and can shift the game a lot and leads to a dramatic conclusion. So players can also choose not to attack the city themselves. They may place the challenge token with the white side up and an ally token that they've gained in the game on top of it. They're then supporting the player of that color. If the supported player wins the conflict, then they can choose 1 territory for each of the ally tokens of that color that they have to count towards the city scoring at the end of the game. When the final challenge is over, then the players' victory points are all totaled up, 1 for each base, 1 for each ally token, and 2 for each territory that has the most bases in it. And finally, the winning player gets to read a secret message and make 1 final choice. And that's the basics of Fall of the Last City. It's a deeply social, highly dynamic game based entirely on meaningful player choices. Now, I hope you choose to advance it to the final round and give playing it a shot. Thank you. And if you're interested in more details or have any nagging questions about edge cases, keep listening and I will cover them. So, pawns are blocked by the warriors or pawns of other players. To place warriors on a base, a pawn must be on the center of the base, and that the warriors must be placed directly into the player's tribe bag. When a player picks up warriors from one of their bases, they put those warriors directly into the tribe bag, and those are the warriors that are traveling around with your pawn as you move it around the board. Players may only do each part of the board action once, and so that means that their order becomes very important and a great deal of strategy arises from that set of choices. Player movement is stopped by a challenge. So when a challenge is issued, you have to stop moving, but players can finish all of the other parts of their action. Challenges are resolved at the end of 1 turn before the beginning of the next turn. And if there's more than 1 challenge during a turn, they're resolved in the order that they're issued. In addition to giving victory points, ally tokens allow players to move their pawns through warriors or pawns of that color. If you attack or betray a player that you have an alliance with, you have to give them their alliance token back, but they don't have to give you yours back unless you also betrayed them. All players may speak during a challenge, so the game quickly becomes as much about negotiation and trust as about mechanical strategy. A pure prisoner's dilemma is an understood game theory problem, and it has an optimal solution. Even an iterative prisoner's dilemma, where the choice is given several to many times in a row, has optimal strategies given an opponent's behavior. But embedding that kind of iterative choice into the context of mechanical strategy puts players in positions where the optimal choice for the prisoner's dilemma is at odds with the optimal strategic choice. And that leads to interesting conflict. Add to that the shifting alliances in a 6-player game, and every challenge is meaningful. If 2 allies have the same number of bases in a territory during scoring, they can split those 2 victory points, 1 each. At the very end of the game, when they read the secret message, they get to decide if they want to win the game. If they don't, they pass the message to the second place player, and they get to read it to decide for themselves. Now, I won't spoil the contents of the message, but players regularly decide not to win, though all 6 players have never made that choice. And that's all the bonus content, so if you're still listening, thank you very much.